It is training session number 5 with Sparky, and today I am working on getting him to move off pressure. I have started off getting him to move off pressure on the ground to ensure he has an understanding of what I want under saddle. It's also easier for me to correct him from the ground first. So as you can see on the ground, he's still unsteady in the contact like he is under saddle, but I will address that probably in our next training session. So what I mean by unsteady in the contact is he either leans on the bit or tries to duck behind the vertical. He's not actually taking the contact a lot of the time. He's starting to get the concept, but you have to remember that he is an 11-year-old horse, so it hasn't even been broken in quite 12 months. So that means for the first 10 years of his life, he's carried himself a particular way. Now I've come along and I want him to be straight under saddle. Now what I mean by straight is his body from pole to tail is following the line that he's traveling on, whether that be a curved line or a straight line, and his back feet step up into the hoof prints left by his front feet. So right now what I'm doing is getting him to yield his shoulders away from me and getting him to yield his hindquarters away from me. So while I find it easy to get him to yield his hindquarters, both under saddle and on the ground, he finds it much more difficult to yield his shoulders. So getting him to do it on the ground first will hopefully then make it easier under saddle. So if I can't move his shoulders away from my inside leg, he's not going to be straight on the curved line that I'm riding him on. Now in both directions, he likes to lead with the inside shoulder, more going to the left than the right. So going to the right, everything is easier because the left shoulder's on the outside. So even though he wants to throw his shoulder in a little bit, I find it much easier to move him off my inside leg. So you'll see in a lot of our transitions, we add a little hop in the transition to trot. So that's because he really throws into his inside shoulder and tries to hop into the trot rather than just stepping under with his back end and engaging the hindquarters and stepping into trot. So again, yielding the shoulders and the hindquarters is part of the process of improving the upward transitions. So, and the issue with the falling on the inside shoulder is the same in the canter, which makes it difficult for him to go into canter and then maintain a canter. So I'm not sure if our canter transitions recorded on a video, but he does this little jump into canter and even was doing some little almost cantering up and down on the spot when I cantered him. So because he's not bending around my inside leg, his rib cage is actually blocking the inside hind leg from stepping under. So his back legs are sort of leaving the ground almost together rather than separately, and then not really coming under. So it's not a correct canter yet. So again, this isn't because of bad training. This is just he hasn't had the training and he's been, like I said, carrying himself a certain way for the last 10 years. So nobody's taught him any different, which is where my job is, to teach him how to carry himself in a more correct frame and in a more correct way. So he's utilizing his top line muscles, allowing the hindquarters to step under, separating the back legs so he's a more comfortable horse to ride. So I'm ignoring the issues with the contact for the moment because that's not what I'm concentrating on. I will not hold the head down to keep him in a frame. That's not correct. He needs to engage his hindquarters, come up through the back, lift the thoracic sling, which then he'll drop the pole and start to reach for the contact. But again, that's training. Part of that training is then me moving him around under saddle, yielding the shoulders left and right, and then yielding the hindquarters left and right. So at this stage, I can open the inside rein and yield the shoulders across the circle, or I can open my outside rein and yield the shoulders out. And then I step off each inside leg, I step the hindquarters out to describe a slightly larger circle. So essentially what I'm doing is a large turnabout the forehand. So he has started to do some turns on the forehand. However, there's no gymnastic value in that, and I have to be careful with doing turns on the forehand that he's not trying to step his shoulders across to get the hindquarters around the shoulders, because that's not correct, and that's not what I'm asking him to do. I'm asking him to step around my inside leg and step the hindquarters around while the shoulder stays centered. There you go, you see him. He is happier to step onto that right shoulder there. So this is just the basics of the lateral work done firstly from the ground and then onto saddle.